I think we might just pause for a minute, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll ask a few questions of the panel. Just before we ask those questions, and we'll ask you to pull up your hand because there are a couple of roving mokes, otherwise known as roving mics, out there. I might go to Ruth. First. Ruth, hold that mic. While everyone's thinking of their question to the panel, there were 3 questions that have been SMS to us, not just 3. I've got 2 pages of questions, but you might read them out, Ruth, and answer them.
Thanks.
While everyone's getting their breath.
Sorry, that is on. Thanks. So these are quick ones. It was really about the survey sort of results. So
Thanks,
the first
guys.
one was about, that question about sources of information, advice and support, was there anything about the effectiveness?
Yeah.
Look, the two things that were covered. So when we asked, who do you use, that is just really about that they're accessible. But the second one, which is about main source, well, that really does speak to effectiveness, because that's someone that says, no, these are the ones that are effective for me. So in some ways, we're seeing effectiveness by the identification of main source. Second question was the potential skewing of the data set. Did only the better farmers reply? Now that is the issue about all samples. So why we think we've got, and we have looked at representativeness of the sample based on the ABS stats, and we're doing more work on that, but we did have 2 methods. So online and phone. And phone was random, so and that was about half-half split. So we, as I said, we are looking, we have got a difference across those 2 populations, but we're confident that it isn't just the ones that like to fill out surveys and talk about the practice change that they've done, that we have got, through the random sampling of the half, some aspect of other types of farms. The last one was that there was a comment about considering our frameworks about farmers and the change that they're making, whether it's chosen versus unchosen change, and they're referring to this is a theme at an APEN conference which I was at 4 years ago. I suppose I'd just say I'd agree that's part of our challenge, that yes, there's a type of change that's very productivity related, that's particular practices, but there's also a lot of other things that need to be considered, like our adaptation to challenges, to crisis, how prepared is the system for that. So I suppose I'd just say I'd agree.
Thanks very much, Ruth. That's fantastic. Now, can we take a few questions from the audience? Just whack your hand up and that roving moke will come to you fairly quickly. So, questions for the panel. They were too good to let go. Yes, one in the middle. Thanks, Gordon. You're always your lion, Gordon.
Thanks, Steve. Just a couple of questions, particularly to John and to Chris. To me, one of the big issues that we've been dealing with for 10 years or more is segmentation. Because when we're thinking about our target audience from farmers and also thinking about it from the point of view of advisors, and I think John touched on that segmentation in some detail, that's the really big issue that we've got to confront. So I guess the question from my point of view is, how best do we do it, and what's your take on it? Maybe John and Chris and anyone else who would like to comment.
Thanks.
You're going to do that poll every week?
Thanks, Gordon. Thanks, Gordon. I'll have a stab. I think within the dairy industry, we're fortunate. We've got 6,000 farms. It's easy to segment. Like, a marketer looks at that, says you should know the birthday of all of those people. Like, it's simple. It's straightforward. The key for us is there's some really easy things to segment people on, farm size, all the rest of it, that sometimes sends you in the wrong direction. I think where we need to do a better job is segmenting around people's appetite for change, willingness to change, and some sense of what are the major issues or the major challenges that they're confronting. That information's harder to assemble, but we speak to our farmers often, we survey them often, and we should be slowly taking information when we do that to build a picture that then's helpful around segmentation. John, did you?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, as far as segmentation, I mean, we work across all segments. effectively, if it's a production system. I think with the exception of pork, I'm not sure we do a lot in pork, but certainly all the other segments, we work across them. So we have contact points with all of those producers, or not all of them, but certainly the ones that are our clients across all of those segments. I think segmentation from my perspective is perhaps looking at it, as I said, agribusiness ain't agribusiness. It's segmentation within the agribusiness sector. So, there are credible companies, there are credible individuals within companies, then there are the other side. There's snake oil salesmen and companies that present to be credible that perhaps aren't. And how do we segment that? I think is a real challenge. But I guess from my perspective, where do we focus the extension? And I think Adrian talked about pick your audience. Is it actually upskilling those 1,500 agronomists so as they're delivering the information to farmers? And I guess I go back to that perception thing. I think there's a perception that if we upskill those guys, they're going to taint it with their want to sell products, so the information won't get through in a clean fashion. And I challenge your thinking on that. I don't think that's the case. They want to help their farmers. So hopefully that comes some way to answering the question.
Anyone else? Another question? Up the back. G'day, Mike. Got your wallet back?
Thanks for my wallet, Steve. A very brief comment, but then a question. John Evans would not have been allowed in that meeting with the Ag Institute 10 years ago. So there is some progress between the private sector and the reselling sector. The question, though, is how much, if we're honest about it, we've talked about farmers not accepting change. How much should the professional advisors look in the mirror?
That's to the whole panel.
To the whole panel.
Mike, thanks for the $50. You see a credit card transaction at Rip Curl Talker, you knew who took your wallet. I think it's a really good point, Mike. We all have to be changed. I thought Carolyn's point when she talked about the first poll about how many of us clicked change or willingness to change. And I used to be in the government extension service too, and had a view of the world when I was younger and possibly more mature. And now in my role, I'm totally driven by what the farm client wants rather than trying to change them. I'm trying to help them achieve what they want to achieve. And if I don't help them achieve what they want to achieve, then I'm not successful. If they want to achieve something that I don't think they want to achieve, then I don't work with them, or I shouldn't be working with them. I can only back that up. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I can only back up the exact purpose of that. And you know that I haven't been a big player in some professional organisations for some of the comments you made at the very beginning of regarding to John. So I'm now getting an age group where I can actively participate in the Ag Institute.
Okay. Thanks very much, everyone. We might just keep rolling on. Is there another? Oh, Elkie, sorry, I didn't see
I
you.
was just going to comment on that.
Good on you.
Yeah, I think whilst I guess I talked about the South Australian Livestock Consultants group, whilst we're sort of independent of product sales, we've certainly recognised that yes, there's a hell of a lot of fantastic advisors and consultants out in the public or in the industry sector. And so one of the the aims of the technical update that we're actually holding is we're opening that up to basically advisors in any field. So whether it be private, public sector, the agencies. And I guess South Australia, we are really trying to develop that culture of inclusiveness and connectivity between and with the South Australian sheep industry development blueprint, the sheep industry blueprint, trying to bring, the research, the university, and the advisors, whoever they represent, all together in the same room together, just so we can get that connectivity. So yes, I think you made a really good point. Yep.
Thanks very much, Elkie. And John?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thanks, Mike. Absolutely, in terms of our sector, the need for change, and I've been harping on about the perception that we have of the tainted nature of agribusiness advisors. They've earned it. It's not something that's been dreamt up. There certainly particularly historically, has been people out there that's really what they did, and there are still people out there now that's what they did. So I think the need for change within that sector is to keep driving towards credible, client-focused advice rather than sales.
Carolyn?
In terms of the farming system groups, I think the challenge or opportunities to change relate to continuing to improve our level of professionalism and the quality of service that we provide. And like I said before, very much saying what we're going to deliver and then delivering that, not more, not less. I think there are also, across Australia, there are hundreds of farming systems groups which are all very much driven from a local farmer base. I think the challenge for the farming system groups now is how can we collaborate, cooperate, potentially amalgamate at a state, regional or national level so that we can improve our professionalism, improve our efficiencies and probably make us easier to work with, because it's always easy to work with half a dozen groups rather than 700. But the challenge in that is really to maintain that local passion, local commitment that has driven the success of farming systems groups up to now.